Revenge films.
My name is Kayla Smith, and I have a fiancé named Thomas Williams. On that day, I was bringing my fiancé back to my family house for the first time ever, and I was explaining the situation to them. But then, this was the first thing my father said when he opened his mouth.
You're engaged to Kayla, you say? Wow. I guess there are people who like outdated things in this world.
Goodness, really? If you're going to get married, then why don't you get married to a much younger girl? Kayla is an old woman already.
If Kayla's an old woman, then I guess that makes you a grandma.
Thomas looked directly at my father's second wife, my stepmother, and immediately retaliated to her words. She liked to brag about how young she looked, and her hobby was to go to expensive spas and beauty treatments to try to make herself look younger. So, of course, he was furious when Thomas said that.
Excuse you! How dare you say such a thing? Looks like you're a great match for Kayla, then.
Well, hold on there, honey.
Things were starting to escalate, and my dad tried to stop my stepmom.
By the way, Thomas, was that your name? What university did you attend? For the record, I went to one that starts with an H.
University? About that.
For a moment, Thomas wasn't sure how to respond. Judging by the way my dad was bragging about the university he went to, he could probably already see the reaction that was coming next.
I actually didn't go to university.
Excuse me?
My father sat there and stared at Thomas.
You didn't go to university? Well then, don't tell me that your last level of education was...
Yes, I only graduated from high school, but what about that?
A high school diploma, huh?
My father wasn't able to hold it in and he started laughing out loud. But then his wife started slapping him on the shoulder and joined in.
Oh, honey, don't be so mean. He graduated from high school. He should be very proud of such an accomplishment.
Thomas is amazing, you know. His company is even... I tried to explain, but my father only continued to make fun of Thomas and look down on him.
Oh, a company! Were you able to weasel your way into some kind of decent company? Well, if it's a company that's going to employ somebody with only a high school diploma, it can't be all that great anyway. I'm sure it wouldn't even be able to stand at the feet of my company anyway. Besides, graduating from high school and graduating from university are completely different ranges of salaries. And I bet you can't get promoted in the future either.
That's true. I'm sure it's impossible to have any further promotions anymore.
Yeah, I bet. Looks like you have a very sincere personality there, Thomas. Well, for Kayla, a husband with only a high school diploma is probably perfect. You both didn't go to university, so you could try to cheer each other up with your low income for the rest of your lives.
1 year later, Thomas and I were married, and we were blessed with the birth of our beautiful baby.
Don't you think you should at least tell your parents about this?
I'm sure they wouldn't be interested. I mean, I gave them the address of our new apartment here, but they never come to visit us once, have they? I've tried to say no, but Thomas was always choosing kindness, and he was against me cutting off all ties with my family.
I understand how you feel, Kayla, but they're still your only parents in the entire world. I know that you're still angry at your parents because they made fun of me for my educational background, but well, there's nothing I can do about that anyway, and it doesn't matter either. I don't care anymore.
That might be true, but still. In the end, I caved, and I reluctantly sent them a message to inform them that we had our first child. I sent it by email because I didn't even want to talk to them on the phone. I already know that this isn't going to turn out good, and that they're not going to say anything good either. I was almost certain of this, and a few days later, that terrible feeling I had was about to come true. Perhaps my father and his new wife were both bored, because they suddenly showed up at our apartment one day without any call or notice that they were going to visit us. Dad and stepmom as well, but why? What are you doing here?
We brought you something to celebrate the fact that you gave birth. That's not abnormal, is it?
However, when I looked at my parents and the way that they were dressed, it was beyond the most demonic manner. They were dressed from head to toe in funeral wear.
why are you wearing funeral clothing?
As soon as my parents walked into the house, Thomas very calmly asked them about it.
Do you not know the meaning of funeral clothing? Well, this is exactly why someone who only has a high school diploma is useless. Funeral clothing is to be worn any time that a tragedy has occurred.
Obviously, we know that much. What we're trying to ask you is why you were wearing that when you say you're coming to celebrate the birth of our child. Next to my father, my mother-in-law was grinning from ear to ear.
Any child that has to be born to a useless woman like you, and a husband with a useless education like Thomas, is nothing more than a tragedy, isn't it? We all know how that kid is going to end up. He's probably going to keep causing trouble to everybody around him, and is also only going to graduate from high school and end his life uselessly and miserably. Oh dear, when I think about it like that, perhaps the tragedy is actually for the baby.
Oh, that's never going to happen.
Oh yes, it is going to happen. That's why we're wearing funeral clothing for this tragedy.
And then my stepmother grabbed an envelope out of her purse and threw it at our feet.
There you go. Celebratory money for the birth of that sad child. Pick it up.
When I looked down at the envelope, it said very clearly, "We are sorry for your loss." It was a black and white envelope, the type that you often see only at funerals. What is this? I was shaking with anger, while my mother-in-law simply stood there and laughed.
Oh, goodness. And this is why uneducated folk are such a pain. That's a funeral envelope, obviously. It's black and white, so it symbolizes a tragedy. By the way, for happy celebrations, the colors are usually red and white, sometimes with gold and silver.
Please leave right now.
Before we do that, why don't you open up the envelope and look inside? Because I gave you money after all, so you should be grateful and thank us.
I had a really bad feeling about it, but I could not look inside the envelope because she looks like she wasn't going to move until I did. From inside, I pulled out $90, and I knew immediately that as a basic standard manner for funerals, anything less than $100 was seen as blatant disrespect towards the family of the deceased.
To be honest, we were going to only give you about $40, but now that you have a child and you guys are going to become even more poor than you were before, we thought that we would be kind and bless you with a little bit more.
Well then, why did you choose $90?
You still don't get it, because no matter how hard your family tries, you will never be worthy $100, you poor things.
After laughing at us and belittling us like that, my parents cackled with each other and then skipped out of our house.
Kayla, my judgment was wrong. I'm sorry. Even though you said that you wanted to distance our family from your parents, and that you wanted to cut off all ties with them, I tried to stop you all this time because they're your parents. But...
Thomas raised his voice, and even though I had been looking down this whole time, I looked up at his strong stance.
Any parents like that, you're more than welcome to cut off all ties with. Let's block them both. And plus, this temporary residence is only until the end of this week. With that, I think it's all perfect timing. We don't ever need to see them again.
That's true. Our dream home that we're building right now is almost finished, right?
Yeah. There's nothing to worry about anymore.
Thomas looked at me with a strong but gentle smile, and he held me in his arms.
Luckily, our company's business is only continuing to go higher and higher uphill, and all of our contracts with the major companies are going well too. As the CEO, I'm busy. But I swear to you, I'll make you and our baby the happiest family on earth. I love you, Kayla.
Thank you, Thomas. I love you too. Not long after I cut off all ties with my parents and I blocked them, I received a phone call from an unknown number. When I answered the phone, suddenly, I heard a voice screaming at me on the other end of the phone, clearly under the influence of alcohol.
How dare you! How dare you do this to your own parents!
Dad, is that you?
How dare you! Why haven't you been answering our phone calls?
Why don't you ask yourself that question and try to answer that for yourself? I yelled back.
I thought so. It was about that small joke at one time, wasn't it? That was because your stepmom insisted on doing it, and she pulled out the funeral clothing from her closet, so I didn't have a choice!
You didn't have a choice? That was crossing the line on so many levels. Why didn't you stop her?
I was wrong for that. I apologize. I apologize. Sorry, I just got a bit carried away. That's all.
You just got a little bit carried away, huh? Well, in that case, you sure got pretty carried away to dress yourself in funeral clothes, walk over here together, and throw a funeral envelope at her feet. And not only that, but with $90 in it.
Yeah, you're right. That was wrong. More importantly, why were you hiding Thomas's true nature from us this whole time? Why didn't you tell me that Thomas was the CEO of the most recognized startup company in the country right now? Why?
The moment you heard that he didn't go to university, he started to make fun of him, and you refused to listen, even when he tried to tell you himself.
Well, your father did graduate from H University after all, so I can't help but look down on someone who didn't even go to university at all. You understand, right?
For the record, Thomas was actually accepted into H University as well, with a full scholarship at that. But at that point, the company that he started was already starting to become really busy, so he decided to decline the university's offer and get straight to work.
Sure, I also knew that already, because you see, everybody at my company is, well, they're all talking about Thomas.
What do you mean by that?
Have you heard about the business partnership contract that's been formed? Thomas's company and our company are going to be signing a business partnership, which was our CEO's own wishes. Our company hasn't been able to keep up with the digitalization of this day and age, and apparently, the higher-ups at our company are wanting to receive instruction from Thomas, who's at the forefront of our industry. Which leads me to my point. If your father were to become promoted even higher, you'd be happy too, right?
Nope, absolutely not. Because I've already cut off all ties with my family anyway.
Wait a minute, please? If Thomas says anything bad about me to the higher-ups at my company, then I'll never get to be promoted!
That's none of my business.
Well, as soon as Thomas gets back to your house, I'll get down on my knees and personally ask him myself. And then if I can, I'm going to have him assign me to a new post and then I'll be able to get past all of those other guys and I'll finally be able to reach the top of the hill.
My dad was muttering something like that to himself, but I didn't listen and I hung up the phone. But then, later that night, I received another phone call from an unknown number. Is it from my dad? But that's weird. Knowing him, I thought that he would have showed up at my door already. When I picked up the phone, I was shocked that the phone call was actually from the hospital. And then they proceeded to tell me, "What? My father's in the hospital? But how? Why? An accident? You said it was a car accident? But what about the other person? Oh, he crashed into a telephone pole himself, and there was a lot of alcohol found in his system. Wait, so that means he was drunk driving? Huh? Did you just say he also didn't have a driver's license?" Thomas must have overheard me on the phone because he quickly gathered the situation and he already had the car keys in his hands.
Let's go.
Sure. I was panicking because of the unexpected turn of events, but we headed towards the hospital. When we arrived, my father was in critical condition with obvious injuries.
Honey, what happened? What do I do? What do I do?
By the time we got there, my stepmom was already there and panicking. I assumed that it was because she was worried about my father's well-being, but instead,
Drunk driving without a license at that. Any top company would have strict compliance rules, so there's no doubt that he's going to get fired from his job. But there are still so many brand name purses that I want, and I still need to pay off all of my monthly memberships and all those expensive spas.
To our dismay, my stepmom was only worried about money, and only worried about herself. As the last act of pity, I left that envelope of $90 on the table for them. And then, Thomas and I left the hospital. After that, my father was indeed fired from his company. My father always had a huge ego, but trying to find a new job at his older age, it seems like he was finally understanding how difficult the job market was. Because of that, he started to take out his frustrations on his wife as well, and it seemed that my family situation was a disaster. And then one day, to come and beg for Thomas's help, he came barging into your house.
Wow, Sir Thomas, what a beautiful house you have. I can see you're a true CEO.
Well, I suppose it is. And I am.
Even though you used to live in an apartment like that.
That was actually just temporary housing. until this house could be built up. I only chose it because it was the closest apartment complex to my company office.
I see. That makes sense.
I could see that my dad was desperately trying to get on Thomas's good side, but Thomas wasn't trying to play along at all. But then, on that day, even my stepmom showed up and barged into our house as well.
Thomas, please, I'm begging you. I'm about to have my membership at the most expensive spa revoked if I don't pay them. But we still don't have any money. If that were to happen, I'm going to become the laughingstock of the entire neighborhood. You have to help me.
His educational background and his job at a major company were everything to my father. Everything that he bragged about. And for my stepmom, trying to make herself look younger was everything to her. And so, both of them were looking desperate at the bottom of hell. Of course, there was no way that neither Thomas nor I would lend them any money, and we didn't offer any assistance to my father to find a new job either. In the end, my stepmom was no longer able to dress herself up to go outside anywhere, and she was left looking terribly run down all the time. Nowadays, her already aggressive personality has disappeared, and I heard that everybody around the neighborhood is gossiping about her. Because of that, even though she used to love being flashy going out to show herself off in public, I heard that now she just stays holed up at home. As for my father, that ego of his and his pride in his education became his own enemy. To this day, he's only trying to get a job at the top class companies, and he is still unemployed. It seems like it's still going to take some time for him to understand that he's not a fit for those companies. So I'm sure my family's household is still going to be up in flames for a while, and that my father and my stepmom are going to continue burning in hell.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.